to this roundtable. Welcome to this roundtable, which is, of course, focusing on advancing courage, contributions, and compliance through climate law and policy solutions. This session is co-hosted by some very near and dear partners, including the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions at the University of Victoria, the Center for International Sustainable Development Law, and our colleagues from the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. I'm Professor Marie-Claire Cordonnier-Seger, and together with Tejas Rao, who is sitting across from me, I will be chairing this panel for us today. This session focuses in particular on some key questions about law and policy solutions to climate change. First, what are the social, economic, and environmental dimensions of climate change responses? And why are they so critically important, including for Indigenous peoples? How can sustainable development commitments under the Paris Agreement, from enhancing resilience to climate impacts to promoting clean energy transitions or fostering nature-based solutions, be helped or hindered by law and governance reform? As parties to the Paris Agreement evaluate progress at COP28, what climate law solutions, with an emphasis on Indigenous law and policy approaches, can be highlighted? And in particular, since we have been meeting together in the Climate Law and Governance Day for several years now, what has been the progress on the new Routledge Handbook on Climate Law and Governance and on the Climate Law and Governance Capacity Pledge? How to accelerate that progress? So we are joined by a very brilliant and distinguished panel, and I will be looking forward to introducing them in just a moment. First, I would like to invite my co-chair to give his greetings, and also to introduce a video where our third chair, Professor Ian Mauro, is bringing in an esteemed and very deeply valued and honored Indigenous leader from Canada, Sheila Watt-Cloutier, who of course served as chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, as well as being a laureate of many awards.
Thank you very much, Professor Cordonnier-Seger. To set this stage for this conversation, I think it's important to acknowledge that this roundtable takes place as a series of roundtables that go back to Glasgow and perhaps conversations that have taken place even prior to that. But it promotes and takes forward the conversation on courage, contributions, and compliance through climate law and policy, focusing on these values as drivers of climate law, looking at what legal tools are available from these values and what you can eke out from the legal tools themselves in order to promote climate law compliance, to promote contributions and participation within climate law, and to promote a greater deal of courage in coming up and innovating further to implement the Paris Agreement and implement all of the protocols available to us within the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. I will not say much further because I think the conversation now will speak for itself. But as Professor Cordonnier-Seger foreshadowed, I would now like to turn your attention to the large screen to show you a video that features Professor Ian Mauro, the Executive Director of the Pacific Institute for Climate Solutions at the University of Victoria, and Honorable Sheila Watt-Cloutier, the past chair of the Inuit Circumpolar Council and laureate of the Right Livelihoods Award. If we can have the video play, please.
University of Victoria in British Columbia, Canada. I'm coming to you from the following speaking territories of the coastal Salish people, and that matters because the original inhabitants of these lands, people who have been on these waters and territories for thousands of years, have witnessed environmental change. They have navigated it. They have tremendous insight to help us collectively figure out how to deal with it through Indigenous science, Indigenous values, natural law, and understanding of the laws of nature. And I've had the good privilege of working with Indigenous people in many parts of Canada, including the Canadian Arctic. And I met Sheila Watt-Cloutier, a visionary, an Inuit leader who has helped us to understand how Indigenous knowledge can actually support the highest levels of climate law and governance. And she helped to bring the Stockholm Convention into ratification, one of the most important fast moving environmental treaties that the UN ever produced, and also linked climate change and human rights and brought the first petition to the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, claiming that the United States had violated Inuit rights for their unrelated and objective missions. And that opened the conversation to the issues of climate change and human rights. And Sheila, or Sila, as you'll hear, is very pleased to be in these conversations. And I'm going to show you a little conversation that we had to bring this message to you at a conference.
I am a woman for the draft, but I was also into the drums in that age. I probably way up for 6 years of my life, and in 1926, went on to education work. I did a good education system. Then I did a lot of international work. We went to the Certain Council on the Fox Treaty that persisted with the successful Stockholm Convention on these boxes that ended up in our food chain, and there was a work for mothers. But the mother and grandmother for me was a no-brainer to say, this is not just a kind of story. He was successful by engaging the multiple people and rather than the multiple purpose, educating the world what toxins meant for us in terms of health. You know, I was out there putting the human face to these issues. Toxins in our food chain and climate change are very paralleled in the Arctic. It's all about urgent health matters and it's all about cultural survival, both of them. And so they intersect. Climate change is yet another assault on a way of life that has so negatively impacted us. And so I became the spokesperson for the Coalition of Indigenous Peoples of the Circumpolar World in protection of Inuit rights and culture. We were able to then just switch right away to addressing the issues of climate change because the two are very interconnected. And that work led me to pioneering the work on connecting climate change to human rights. And so we were able to really get the attention of the world on climate change as a human rights issue. And we were ahead of our time. Within 5 years, it became mainstream language, climate change, human rights issue, where the UN, Amnesty International, and many other organizations now see it as a human rights issue. So we paved the way for that.
A lot of your story is obviously inside your book, The Right to Be Cold. What does that mean to you, that statement?
Well, it means everything to me. The right to be cold is our right to health, our right to our homes. There's so many rights involved in that. Every right that we have that is already entrenched in international law is the right. And it's our right to be Inuit as we know it. And our right to be Inuit as we know it has been limited and diminished because of all of these environmental problems that we're facing today. We thrive in the cold. Our animals thrive in the cold. We thrive in the cold. Ice is our life force, and this is really about the livelihoods of Inuit, the culture, the wisdom, because as the ice goes, so does the wisdom of Inuit. The solutions are not far from home. They are home. And for me, I really do believe strongly that culture is a medicine. And I also strongly believe that indigenous wisdom is the medicine the world seeks in addressing sustainability issues. Don't see the indigenous wisdom or Inuit wisdom as victims of globalization, of commercialization, of climate change, but see us as teachers. And once you see us as teachers, we have much to teach about these issues. It's about building partnerships with those that I think are going to be grounded in the understanding of indigenous wisdom, and building those kinds of partnerships with others who have that influence and the resources around them that would help to elevate those kinds of messages to the world. But again, as I always say in my talks, it will happen at the speed of empathy, and it will happen at the speed of trust. And those are really important in terms of building empathetic, deeper understanding of indigenous issues, because then you can create a building of trusting relationships. That's reconciliation in real time. And so again, it's about working together. How do we build a sustainable world? And for me, leadership is really important. Leadership is about really bringing those pieces together from an authentic place. We are the land, you know, and the land is us. We've got to be real about these issues, and that we've got to think differently.
These wonderful insights that Sila has presented help us to think about the interconnections and that indigenous wisdom as the medicine that the world needs. And I hope that medicine reaches you at COP28. I hope it enriches your day. I hope it enriches the dialogue. And thank you for letting Sila and I make this small contribution to the gathering. And over to Mary Claire and the other folks in the session. Enjoy your day, and let's carry this work forward in a good way that respects Indigenous peoples from all over the world. Thank you.
So, for my sins, I teach in the University of Victoria, Faculty of Law, which has the world's first JID, Juris Doctor in Indigenous Law. It's taught alongside the common law degree that, of course, comes to us from England, in British Columbia, Victoria. And it is my Indigenous law students who are taught by Indigenous law instructors that have inspired me in much of the work that we have done to date. So when we look for climate solutions, we can look at the common law, we can look at the civil law, countries like Brazil, countries like Germany, oh yes, and France, and the Francophone African countries, all of Latin America actually. We can also look at the Indigenous law and the Sharia law and other legal systems that over time I think we will understand offer us many solutions. This panel, of course, is meant to be pluri-jurisdictional. So we will take any of the solutions that you can tell us about, that you are investigating in any legal system of the world. And we would be very, very grateful to hear about them because we're desperately in need of solutions today. I will start by welcoming especially one of our partners in this session, the World Commission on Environmental Law of the IUCN, and a dear friend and colleague for many years, Dr. Fabiano Dandare Correa, who has kindly joined us and has done some incredible work around the world on nature-based solutions and the legal elements of facilitating those solutions. And I would love to hear a few key insights from him.
Thank you very much, Mary Claire. Good afternoon. Is this working? Yeah. It's wonderful to be part of this panel and represent the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law. You might have heard of the commission. It's the biggest network of environmental lawyers globally, and is of course the legal arm, so to say, of the IUCN, the biggest nature conservation organization globally. You might have heard of the work of IUCN, for instance, on the list of endangered species of animals worldwide. One of the key concepts that IUCN has been working to really develop and mainstream is the concept of nature-based solutions, which really have become one of the key, I would say, policy solutions and discussions in climate and biodiversity policy spaces recently. In essence, what a nature-based solution aims to do is really just to help nature do what it should be doing, what it can do for environmental services, for the benefit of the environment, but also for the benefit of society. So it's really working with nature as opposed to working against nature as we have been doing. But as we are lawyers, we understand the importance of concepts. So the importance of looking at nature-based solutions also from a legal perspective is first and foremost to understand if this is really going to become mainstreamed as a policy concept, as a solution that can be used widely. We need to understand what it is and what it is not, and how to implement it effectively, and then to also understand what are the implications of using this, what are the enabling elements, both from law and policy, that can really support the achievement of this policy tool. So importantly for the concept of nature-based solutions is that it is multifaceted, right? It isn't supposed to just address a specific climate change objective. A nature-based solution should have also important biodiversity co-benefits, and importantly, social benefits as well. So if, for instance, a climate solution is working to capture carbon from the atmosphere, but it leads to unintended negative biodiversity and social benefits, so it should not be called a nature-based solution. For those purposes, IUCN has developed in 2016 a global standard for nature-based solutions that provides indicators that can be used for policymakers. This has now been mainstreamed really importantly in 2022 through a resolution at the United Nations Environmental Assembly that recognizes the concept of nature-based solutions and the contributions that it can provide. And now it's being also mainstreamed in climate change policy discussions. Last year in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, a new partnership, the ENACT partnership, has been forged to promote this issue and to really investigate and both technically but also in policy discussions how it can be taken forward. And us at the World Commission on Environmental Law, and in particular the Climate Change Specialist Group that I co-chair with a dear colleague, we are undertaking work to understand what are the legal implications and enabling elements of making nature-based solutions implementable as a climate solution. And those go again from having a common understanding, both internationally but also at national, regional levels, about what is and what is not a nature-based solution. And then different elements, including, for instance, the recognition of indigenous customary laws and how to respect them, of human rights, of land tenure rights, biodiversity conservation legislation, and so many other elements that need to come into play to make this implementable. So I think I'll leave it there in the interest of time, but happy to expand more on this issue. Thank you very much for the invitation.
I'm very, very pleased to introduce our second speaker, who will just briefly share some initiatives that they are leading. Visiting Professor Yasmin Batliwala is, of course, Chief Executive of Advocates for International Development, and they launched a rather beautiful legal initiative on the SDGs just now. She was recently speaking as a visiting professor in our class at the University of Victoria with our Indigenous law students, and I wonder if you wanted to just share a couple of points of the types of solutions that your network of over, do I understand, 800 or how many was it, lawyers around the world are doing to be able to help change this. I'm thinking 50,000, but it can't be that many.
Thank you, Mary-Claire. Hello, everyone. It's really good to see you all and to be here and talking to you. So just a little bit about the organisation for which I work, which is Advocates for International Development, or A4ID as we're known. We do work with pro bono lawyers. Principally, all the work we do is using pro bono lawyers, and mostly all our lawyers are from international global law firms. We have, therefore, a network of over 50,000 lawyers working with us worldwide. Our focus is very much working internationally with countries in the global south. And what happens is that we work with development organizations. Now they comprise NGOs, civil society, in-country governments, and also a number of organizations like the UN, World Bank, who come to us with any issue they have regarding the law. We're very much demand-driven, so they can come to us with anything, and they do come to us. It could be a tiny little clause in the contract or something major like law reform, and our lawyers will work with us to assist them. As has been mentioned, the work that we do is focused very much around the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and all the goals are equally important to us, but we obviously have been focusing for some time now on the SDG 13, which is climate action, which is one of the areas that we're certainly intending to do much more work in much more focused way than we currently have. We have over the years worked with a number of development organizations who have come to us with their issues regarding aspects which impact on climate change. And it's interesting to see how lawyers, traditional commercial lawyers, are able to apply their expertise, their problem-solving ability, their ability to influence on the agenda. And this is something that I think is very important to focus and to make clear that even though it's possible that at the moment lawyers in Maine, particularly commercial lawyers, are still trying to get their heads around the climate justice focus, they are nevertheless starting to have to do it. And they're having to do it because their clients expect them to do it. And that's something that's very useful, because until the clients actually push them to start providing their advice, which is looking at factors to do with climate change and climate law, it is not likely that they would otherwise make an issue with this agenda. So that's shifting, and it's shifting really quite rapidly. ESG seems to be the focus at the moment with a lot of law firms, but as I say, the client's agendas are much wider, and so that's enabling that to happen. So in a small way, we're playing quite a big role. The majority of our countries where we work and operate have been seeing the effects of climate change firsthand in at least the last 10 to 15 years. And that's now becoming much more apparent in the global north. And as a consequence of that, I think the fact that climate change is affecting us all is actually going to have a wider and greater impact.
Thank you very much, and those are key insights, deeply appreciated. Also, the work you're doing to help to actually be part of the solution is deeply, deeply appreciated, including by my students just recently. I'm now going to turn to one of the other organizations that is truly leading the way in terms of both engaging on the policy and the law and also leading some of the solutions worldwide. And that is, of course, very well known to Fabiano and to me, among many others, our partners from the International Development Law Organization. And advocate Ermina Pacho is here as climate justice specialist with IDLO, and I'm very, very glad that she is. Before I pass the microphone to her, however, I would like to just recognize a few friends and colleagues who are here in the audience. The vice chair of our board of the Center for International State Development Law, Advocate Pierre Gontier, who is here with us, come all the way from Montreal. I will not put them on the spot, but I have noticed that Cody and Tenya and Maheen and our other partners are here, and it's wonderful to see you. And also, Professor Ian Fry has already joined us, our human rights rapporteur on human rights and the climate change for the United Nations. And so I'd like to just welcome them. Finally, I will underline that she wasn't able to be joined in this morning, but Lara Duvartis, who is, of course, here from the International Bar Association, our other partners, is secretly in the audience. Welcome. So I'm going to turn now to Yamina and just ask her to give us a few thoughts from IDLO's leading work in this area.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm a climate justice specialist working at the IDLO, International Development Law Organization, which is the only intergovernmental organization that is exclusively devoted to promoting the rule of law to advance peace and sustainable development. And I'm happy to share that this year marks 40th anniversary of that work at IDLO. So we're very proud of that. And for our integrated approach, including research, programming, and policy advocacy, we have seen firsthand the transformative power of the rule of law. And in the context of climate crisis, based on our work, the international framework and emerging crisis, we believe that essentially climate crisis is a crisis of justice that is exacerbating the inequalities, threatening human rights and sustainable development in every single part of the world. Therefore, justice must be part of the solution, and this is why IDLO adopted this approach of. This is why IDLO adopted rule of law approach to climate change. So, what are the key elements of that? So, first of all, we believe that climate justice requires fair, equitable, and effective regulatory frameworks to accelerate action to achieve the goals of the Paris Agreement. These laws and regulatory frameworks, they should ensure compliance with human rights and environmental rights, especially when states are implementing international obligations into their domestic law, and then that should help them better include human rights and good governance principle in their national adaptation plans and nationally determined contributions. Also, COP28 is a moment of taking of the first global stocktake. So we believe that in that context, it's critical that we look at the rule of law. We recognize its power and the role of the climate justice, especially when we talk about loss and damage and how to operationalize the fund to ensure that the frontline communities do have real access to justice, and that this is operationalized based on principles of human rights, gender and inclusiveness. These laws and regulatory frameworks, they should go hand in hand with strong independent judiciary and also customary and criminal justice systems to ensure accountability and when these laws are violated and to deliver on the promise of climate justice. We have seen, especially the customary and criminal justice systems, we have seen working greatly in Somalia, Kenya, and Rwanda, for example. We also need to focus on women and girls and champion feminist climate action. There is a wide research showing that when we engage women and girls in climate action, that actually brings us much closer to achieving the goals of the Paris Agreement, and therefore leadership, agency, and participation of women and girls should be recognized by law. Moving forward, we also need to empower the most vulnerable communities, and here again, women and girls, young people, indigenous people and local communities, migrants, refugees, and internally displaced persons, also smallholder farmers and other stakeholders, so that to ensure that they have legal and policy tools to fight against climate injustice, and that they can benefit from just transition and also participate actively in adaptation and mitigation initiatives. And last but not least, we strongly believe that there is a need to improve the governance over land, water, and natural resources. And here I would like to make a link with the indigenous peoples and local communities that we see on the screen, because indeed climate change has the greatest impact on those who are most dependent on land and natural resources, one of the greatest impacts. And according to the data, as research show, indigenous people and local communities, they occupy 20% of the Earth territory, and they are custodians of 80% of planet's biodiversity, yet they are among the most excluded from governing their land. So therefore, we at IDLO believe that we need to promote indigenous rights over land, because that supports their livelihoods, that reduces poverty, conflict over land and other natural resources. Especially in that context, we must recognize customary land rights and diverse forms of land tenure systems. And here also, not only for indigenous indigenous peoples and local communities, but also for other groups such as pastoralists and people on the go, migrants and refugees, to prevent conflict and tensions with the land. Just the last point is that we should ensure that through this legal, through the rule of law approach, that indigenous peoples and local communities are included in the creation of national and international climate and biodiversity policies and decision making in order to make sure that principles such as free, prior, and informed consent are actually implemented in practice. Thank you also here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Now, I understand that Advocate Wayne Garneau-Williams, who is President and CEO of the Intertribal International Trade and Investment Organization, has not yet been able to join us online. Is that correct? Okay. Well, in that case, we will turn directly to a brief presentation that has been prepared by our three discussants, Advocate Susan Ann Samuel, who is a researcher at University of Leeds, and most importantly, the Fellowship Officer of the CISDL, as well as Advocate Gwyneth Boone, a researcher with the CISDL, an assistant editor for the University of Victoria, and Ms. Ajoa Apia, who's a researcher at the University of Waterloo. The last two, I believe, are with us online, despite various time zones. We can see you on the screen. I'm so glad to see as well. All right, now I'm really worried about timelines here. Lydia Young has joined us as well. She is a lawyer from University of Victoria who I understand must be up at nearly 4 a.m. her time in order to be with us in the middle of a trial that she is leading. So Lydia, very special welcome to you. And of course, Lydia is the coordinator of our biodiversity program at the Center for International Development Law. So I'm going to hand the microphone to Susan, who is here in the room, and she will chair this bit.
Hello. Oh yes. Okay, so I consider myself very fortunate to have this opportunity. A very huge thanks to Marie-Claire Codogna-Segur and all the people here at Middlesex University, and this is extremely wonderful. And I'll take this opportunity to just give an intro onto what we want to discuss about what we heard from the panel just now, which is actually very interesting to know that about the pro bono approach, about the nature-based solutions of the indigenous people and the rule of law. And we know as young people, we want more. We want more ambition, we want more legal accountability and all the measures. And so my colleagues and I have prepared this just to introduce you to the few initiatives that can bring courage, compliance in the climate ambition. So to get you onto what we want to tell, it's just that the first initiative that I want to discuss is Climate Law Capacity Registry. So that is spearheaded by myself under CISDL, Center for International Sustainable Development Law. And what we aim to do is, like, during COP26 in 2021, we took a pledge that from 600 to 6,000 people, we will at least try to bring together as legal and governance specialists. So as Professor Marie-Claire Codogna-Segur always used to say, like, what brings, I mean, we need to bridge the legal chasm. And we as lawyers and governance specialists and people who are concerned with institutional reform has to do something. And so the Climate Law Capacity Registry, which stems from the pledge at Glasgow, is now, in 3 months, more than 3,000 law and governance specialists. So we're doing this not just to bring another initiative on the front, but just to resonate into to bring that human face to socioeconomic and environmental dimensions. So why we do this is, again, rooting back to courage, compliance, and what more. So I would like to hand over to Lydia and Gwyneth, who's online, who would like to take us on the initiative of the book.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Samantha.
Oh, can you hear me okay? Perfect. Good afternoon. My name is Gwyneth Boone, and I'm a BCL JD candidate at McGill University and a research assistant for the Center for International Sustainable Development Law. I'm happy to introduce our upcoming Routledge volume, the Routledge Handbook on Climate, Law, and Governance, Courage, Contributions, and Compliance. So the handbook that is forthcoming in 2024 explores the role of law and governance in advancing the global response to climate change and advancing sustainable development. The contributions are by leading experts, practitioners, and emerging scholars on recent legal and institutional innovations relating to climate change. The handbook is edited by Professor Mary-Claire Cordonier-Seger, Professor Christina Voigt, and Dr. Alexandra Harrington, with a foreword by Dr. Alexandra Harrington. And essentially, the goal of the handbook is to bring together leading research on the implementation of the Paris Agreement and make it easily accessible for practitioners, academics, and policymakers. Thank you.
Could Lydia go and explain a bit more for a minute, and then we pass on to Adjoa?
Hi everybody, hope you can hear me all right. That is basically what we were hoping to convey. We're very excited to be working on the volume, and please do get in touch if you want to hear any more details. We can't give too much information right now because we're still working on the manuscript, but it's very exciting and it's going to be forthcoming in 2024.
Thank you, Lydia. Adjoa, can you go next?
Yeah, thank you very much, Susan. Thank you all for the opportunity to join this esteemed panel for this side event at COP28. So I just thought I would share a bit on my ongoing research that's looking at sub-Saharan banks and what they're doing to address climate change. So in light of global stock taking, which is the theme for this year, I thought to just look at the current efforts by sub-Saharan banks. So there are a number of initiatives, such as the adoption of voluntary initiatives. For example, a number of sub-Saharan banks are members of the UNEP, Principles for Responsible Banking, and also the Sustainable Banking and Finance Network that brings together a number of stakeholders, including central banks, ministries of finance, and other banking associations. There's also been an increased level of awareness of climate change that's evidenced in their reporting. So many of their annual reports or sustainability reports are mentioning climate change and its impact on their banking activities, or how their banking activities also impact on climate change. So the double materiality is evidenced in some of the reports. And finally, there's evidence of financing sustainability in the form of green bonds, social bonds, and sustainability-linked bonds that have been issued by a number of sub-Saharan banks in South Africa and in Nigeria as examples. So how can sub-Saharan banks continue to advance courage and capacity? A few thoughts came into my mind through my ongoing research. The first one is mainstreaming climate change considerations into banking activities, and so not having an incremental approach, but deploying capital through the lens of climate change. So from lending to internal operations to the entire spectrum of banking activities. The second thought that comes to mind is to deepen engagement with stakeholders, and these stakeholders will comprise policymakers such as governments when they put together the national climate change plans, mitigation and adaptation plans, engagement with regulators such as the central banks who are coming up with guidelines and principles to guide the behavior of banks towards sustainability, and even clients whom they deploy capital to make them understand and appreciate the need to incorporate climate change considerations into their operations. And also to formalize their net zero commitments. It's interesting to see a number of banks clearly highlighting their targets in their annual reports, but just about 2 of sub-Saharan banks are members of the Net Zero Banking Alliance. So it'll be interesting to see them formalize those targets by becoming members of the Net Zero Banking Alliance. And finally, capacity building. So capacity building by learning best practices, both locally from peers and internationally from advanced countries, and also capacity building of their staff and other community members to appreciate the importance of mainstreaming climate change. So these are just the thoughts that I thought I would just carry across during this discussion. Thank you very much, and then I'll hand over to Suzanne.
Thank you, Adra. Thank you, Lydia, Gwent, and Samantha, and everyone. I just wanted to wrap up and saying, like, this just like, as youths, we want more ambition. So, yeah.
Wonderful. So I think we've managed to save a little bit of time, and my colleague Tejas, co-chair, will take the questions.
Thank you very much. Just to ask if there are any questions in the room first. If there's anyone who has questions, even for our online researchers, that would be more than welcome. Lara, we have a mic there.
Thank you very much. My question is, what can commercial lawyers that have some free time and capacity do to help assist all of you in your organisations? Because I say that I'm Australian qualified, I've got a lot of friends who want to do a lot of good work, who went straight from law school to a law firm, that aren't in academic circles, that aren't in NGO circles, and don't know how to get in to do work and help. So what can they do? Thanks.
So you've given me a really good opportunity just to come in and tell you about our SDG legal initiative, which is very much a call to action, a call to arms, if you like, to the entire global legal community or profession to work on one of the Sustainable Development Goals and perhaps even focus on SDG 13. What it is to try and provide an opportunity for the global profession to work together in a concerted effort to focus on individual SDGs that they particularly want to have and make an impression on. Climate change, it seems to me, is one where global lawyers from the global north and global south can work together really very effectively in doing so. It's an absolute agenda which is very easy to follow, with different aspects of experience as well as understanding to actually look at how it would do so. We have provided a platform, and the platform contains various different tools and resources that are available, including our SDG legal guides, which actually indicate exactly what laws, what areas of legal expertise are required, and indeed, more importantly, what lawyers can do practically to have an impact. Each of the SDG legal guides, there are 17 of them for all 17 goals. What I would just like to end by saying is SDG 17 is perhaps the most important of the goals, and that's one of partnership. And it stresses the importance of partnership, working, and collaboration. And without that, I don't think lawyers can operate either. It is very much having those conversations with scientists, with governments, and also with civil society. And without those rich conversations, I don't know how well we can operate. But it actually, SDG Legal Initiative is one way of lawyers who are not currently in this space to have an opportunity of actually getting involved and understanding. And I think the first thing is understanding why it's relevant. And until they can do so, they won't necessarily want to be involved.
I'm happy to add a couple of points. No, I think maybe two quick things. Just as has been said, I think many times today, just as climate change is a cross-cutting issue, so are lawyers across the board needed, from environmental compliance to contracts. All of those areas of law are needed to implement a nature-based solution or to issue a green bond or financial instruments that will help to address climate change mitigation and adaptation. And in addition to that, I think lawyers have a key role to play in performing due diligence, right? And advising clients on operations, on transactions, on investments, really to become aware of climate change and its implications, human rights implications, biodiversity and nature impact implications, and to be able to advise that in an informed and responsible manner.
I'll add to that then, in terms of becoming informed and in particular ways to do so. We do have a new program that we have launched under my chair in Cambridge called Democratizing Education for Global Sustainability and Justice. And the main goal of the program is to ensure that those interested, particularly from a legal or governance background, no matter where they are in the world, particularly in countries where, as we've talked about this morning in the teaching climate law session, there is no course being offered on climate law. There is no course being offered on the law that will help us to get to the SDGs. They can take those courses online. And so I think some of you, maybe even many of you, have access to those courses. They're only 8, maybe 9 hours long, and there are scholarships for everyone. And the way that it is set up in particular is to allow people to engage and to gain that capacity on the SDGs and the law, on the Paris Agreement and the law from their own home, on their computer, and receive a Cambridge University certificate that they can take forward to give them some of the respaldo, some of the backup that they need, the credentials they need to be able to bring in some of these issues when they're advising clients or when they're continuing in their career. So open invitation from the University of Cambridge Democratizing Education Global Sustainability and Justice Program. If you are interested in taking short courses that might lead to more, we now have them available. I understand we've already had 6,600 people around the world log in and take the courses, so we're starting to grow.
Thank you. I'll be very brief, mindful of the time, but thank you so much for the question. So at IDLO, as I mentioned, we work with judiciary to build the capacity of judges and the broader justice system that is people-centered, but actually that also actively responds to the most pressing problems regarding environmental law and climate justice as such. So we've been working with judges and in different regions of the world, and what I've been hearing from them is that they really want to adjudicate in those cases. They really want to learn and move this agenda also from their standpoint, and in their capacity. However, they are a little bit limited by the cases that are filing. So I guess looking at this problem from a different perspective, I think lawyers have a key role in actually bringing those cases in boosting litigation and strategic litigation in different courts, national and international, liaise with bar associations, civil societies, activist communities, and work together.
I think the common theme that runs across all of these issues, and I think in trying to get commercial lawyers or any lawyers really engaged with these systems, is that you need a community in a sense. And I think you need a community so that your values get reinforced, and also so that you gain the new skills and the new knowledge from your community, and get inspired by your community to do more than you can, because you are capable of doing that. And as a young lawyer, I think joining, for example, the CISTL, then joining the IUCN World Commission on Environmental Law, and getting the opportunity to interact with EcoRID and IDLO through this process has been, for me, phenomenal, because I've gained skills across from these networks that I think clearly have made me move away from commercial law into this space pretty much full time, but I think could inspire more lawyers to do the same at any stage of their career, especially energized by the fact that most of the populations working within these organizations are now early career, or what academia would classify as being early career scholars. So I would just say that the theme across that would probably lead to courage, contributions, and greater compliance is to move into networks that offer you these opportunities and these systems of thinking. And with that, I will pass to my co-chair to close the session for today.
Tejas was keeping us on time. I wonder why. The team really has been just absolutely incredible, and our hosts, especially at Middlesex University Dubai. And we owe it to them to make sure we make it intact to the final plenary and the awards ceremony. So unless there are concluding remarks from online, Lydia, Adjoa, Gwyneth, any final comments? Susan as well? Wonderful. All right. Well, in that case, I will say thank you very, very much for quite an inspiring session. And thank you especially for the work that you're all doing. These are some of the leading international legal organizations in the world that are cooperating globally to address these issues. And I think that's extremely important. I do not want to miss Justice Shawad and Professor Ian and our other closing addresses, though. And so with that, I will say thank you very, very much. And we will go to the final sessions of the day.